Miriam Makeba was born on March 4, 1932, in Johannesburg, South Africa, during one of the most tumultuous times in the country's history. South Africa, at this time, was entrenched in the brutal system of apartheid, a policy of racial segregation and discrimination enforced by the government. This policy denied Black South Africans their basic human rights, separating them from white communities, restricting their access to quality education, healthcare, and even the ability to live where they wanted. Miriam, the daughter of a Xhosa father and a Zulu mother, was born into this oppressive system. She grew up witnessing the daily humiliation of her people. But it was precisely these conditions that would fuel her later resolve to use her art as a weapon for change. From a young age, she became acutely aware of her country's racial injustices, but also the resilience of her people. Miriam's early childhood was marked by tragedy and hardship. Her father, who was a teacher, passed away when she was just a child, and her mother, who worked as a nurse, was left to raise Miriam and her siblings alone. Despite these struggles, her mother remained a pillar of strength and determination. She made sure Miriam understood the importance of education and encouraged her to pursue her talents. It was during these early years that Miriam found solace in music. Her love for singing began when she was very young, and it soon became her refuge in a world that was otherwise harsh and unforgiving. Music allowed Miriam to express emotions that were otherwise difficult to communicate, and she developed a deep connection to it, especially the traditional African rhythms that would later influence her music. Growing up in apartheid-era South Africa, Miriam's environment was shaped by racial inequalities. She witnessed the injustice of segregation on a daily basis. As a young girl, Miriam would often see how Black people were treated as second-class citizens, having to live in designated townships far from white neighborhoods, using separate and substandard facilities, and often subjected to police brutality. These early experiences left an indelible mark on Miriam and would fuel her later activism. She began to realize that her music could transcend mere entertainment. It could be a vehicle for political and social change. But in a country where Black voices were stifled, the notion of using music as a tool for activism was risky. Yet, it was this very risk that would shape Miriam's extraordinary journey. By the time Miriam reached her late teens, her voice had begun to garner attention. She was quickly recognized for her powerful, emotive singing voice. Miriam made her debut in the South African music scene by joining the African Jazz and Variety show in the 1950s. This was a groundbreaking production that presented African music to South Africa's diverse audiences, bridging cultural divides through the language of music. The show was significant not only for its entertainment value, but also for its role in creating a space for Black South African artists to showcase their talents. Here, Miriam found a stage that allowed her to express the anger, hope, and pride that her people felt. Performing alongside many of South Africa's best musicians, Miriam quickly gained recognition for her ability to captivate audiences. It was during this time that her music began to take on a deeper political dimension. Her early songs, though popular, began to speak to the struggles and aspirations of her people. In 1959, Miriam recorded Pata Pata, a song that would come to define her career. The song's upbeat tempo and infectious rhythm made it an instant hit, both in South Africa and internationally. Its catchy chorus and danceable rhythm were perfect for global audiences, and it quickly became one of her signature songs. But beneath its joyful sound was a call for unity and strength in the face of adversity. Pata Pata was not just a fun, light-hearted song. It was a message to the world, a message of African pride, resilience, and the ability to find joy even in the darkest of times. Its success marked the beginning of Miriam's international recognition. As her fame spread, it became clear that she was more than just a popular singer. She was an important voice in the global fight for racial equality. However, as her popularity grew, so did the attention she received from the South African government. In the early 1960s, Miriam was invited to perform at a United Nations concert in New York, which would become a pivotal moment in her life. It was here on the world stage that she gained the attention of international audiences. But while she was abroad, the South African government, already wary of her growing influence, retaliated. They stripped her of her citizenship, banning her from ever returning to her home country. This marked the beginning of Miriam's exile, a painful and difficult period in her life. She was forced to leave her family and her country behind, but rather than retreating in despair, she embraced her new role as an international advocate for the oppressed. Exile did not silence her. Instead, it propelled her to use her voice even more powerfully. Miriam's exile let her perform all over the world, from Europe to the United States, as well as in other African countries. But it was in the United States where she began working closely with other civil rights leaders, including Harry Belafonte and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It was through Belafonte that Miriam's international career truly skyrocketed. Harry Belafonte, already a well-known figure in the fight for civil rights, became an ally and advocate for Miriam. He helped her navigate the American music industry and supported her efforts to bring global attention to the plight of Black South Africans. Miriam's exposure to the civil rights movement in the United States deeply influenced her. She saw the parallels between the struggles of Black South Africans under apartheid and the struggles of African Americans in the U.S. She became a vocal supporter of the American civil rights movement, dedicating her music and platform to the cause of racial equality. Miriam's songs were not just melodies, they were anthems of resistance. In the 1960s and 1970s, Miriam's international concerts became a space for solidarity between African Americans, Africans, and other marginalized communities around the world. One of her most powerful songs, Soweto Blues, was written in response to the Soweto Uprising of 1976, when Black South African students protested against the apartheid government's imposition of Afrikaans as the medium of instruction in schools. The uprising turned violent when police opened fire on unarmed students, resulting in the death of hundreds of young people. Miriam's song captured the grief, anger, and resilience of the students and their families, and became a poignant expression of the pain felt by many in South Africa. Soweto Blues became a worldwide anthem, further cementing Miriam as the voice of the oppressed. Throughout her time in exile, Miriam remained deeply involved with the African National Congress, ANC, the political party that fought against apartheid. She used her music to raise funds for the ANC struggle, and through her concerts, she made sure that the cause of the anti-apartheid movement remained in the global spotlight. She was not just a singer. She was an activist, a spokesperson, and a symbol of the fight for justice. Her work with the ANC helped internationalize the struggle for liberation in South Africa, and her music became a means by which people around the world could engage with and support the anti-apartheid movement. In 1990, after decades of imprisonment, Nelson Mandela was released from prison, signaling the beginning of the end of apartheid. The victory for the ANC and the South African people was now within sight. Miriam had spent over 30 years in exile, but the fall of apartheid marked the beginning of a new chapter in her life. After the release of Mandela, Miriam was finally able to return to South Africa in 1990. Her return was nothing short of historic. She was greeted with tears of joy and celebration by her fellow countrymen, who saw her not just as a singer, but as a hero, a symbol of their collective struggle for freedom. After so many years of separation, Miriam was home. The music, the pain, and the triumph had all led her back to the soil of her ancestors, where she could finally witness the dawn of a new era in South Africa. Despite her return to her homeland, Miriam did not rest on her laurels. Even after the end of apartheid, the wounds of the past remained, and South Africa still faced deep societal issues, such as poverty, inequality, and corruption. Miriam continued to use her platform to advocate for social justice. She was particularly concerned about the condition of women and children in post-apartheid South Africa. Miriam became a strong advocate for the improvement of education and health care for the disadvantaged, continuing to speak out on issues of racial equality, gender justice, and human rights. She also became a representative for the United Nations on various humanitarian issues, working to address global poverty and promote peace. Even in her later years, Miriam remained dedicated to the fight for a better world. Sadly, Miriam's health began to decline in the 2000s, and by 2007, she performed her final concert in Italy. Despite her declining health, she gave an unforgettable performance that left audiences in awe of her enduring talent and passion. Miriam passed away on November 9, 2008, at the age of 76, leaving behind a monumental legacy. Her death was a moment of deep sorrow, but the impact of her life in music continued to reverberate around the world. She had spent her life using her voice to bring attention to the struggles of the oppressed, and in doing so, she had changed the course of history. Miriam's music continues to inspire people worldwide, serving as a reminder of the power of art to bring about social change. Miriam Makeba's life and legacy are a testament to the transformative power of music and activism. She showed the world that music could be more than just entertainment. It could be a powerful tool for social and political change. Through her unwavering commitment to justice, Miriam changed the lives of millions of people, and her legacy continues to inspire new generations of activists, musicians, and dreamers. Mama Africa, as she became known, will always be remembered as a symbol of resilience, courage, and a relentless pursuit of freedom.